Good evening, everybody. Coming to you from my back deck, trying to take advantage of the weather while I still can, if you want to say that. It's a touch chilly out. But the story that I wanted to tell you about today is going to be the craziest arrest I've ever made. And not only is it the craziest arrest I've ever made, or maybe I should say the reason it's the most crazy arrest I've ever made is because it happened right here in this backyard. Well, it started in my front yard and we came through this yard and we ended up in my neighbor's yard. So the year was 2014 and it was on a Saturday. It was a football Saturday, as a matter of fact, in the fall. I don't remember if it was September, October, or November, but I do know that it was a Saturday in the fall. And I was working third shift. I got home, and I think it was a noon game, so I got home at 7:30, and I was gonna have to just hurry up and try to get some sleep so I could get up in time to watch the football game, because where I live, football on Saturday is kind of like what everybody does. So I got home from work. I had a little bit of overtime that day, and when I pulled up in front of my house, at that time I had a big old V8 truck that was a gas guzzler, and because the gas prices were so high in 2014, I had bought a small car, like a Chevy Cruze, to drive to and from work just to save on gas mileage. My truck parked in the driveway, and my car I parked in the street across from my driveway. Well, on this particular morning, I get home from work and there's a minivan parked where I normally park my car. Kind of frustrating, but not a big deal. City streets, anybody can park wherever they want. But regardless, I had to park further away than what I would normally park. So I get out of the car, I'm carrying my lunchbox in one hand and my duty belt in the other hand. I'm still in my full uniform. And I remember I walked by the van, I looked at it, and it looked strange to me because it didn't look like a van that would be parked in my neighborhood. It was a little bit older, a little bit beat up. Nobody in my neighborhood had a car like that at that time. Plus, it was parked a little bit away from the curb, and the windows were rolled down. This was early morning, so I didn't expect anyone to have just pulled up and parked there. It's my expectation on a Saturday morning at around 7:30 in the morning that that car has been parked there all night. And it's very odd to have windows down, at that time of year. So anyway, since I had to park further down the road, I had to walk in front of my neighbor's house, and then there's a gap between my neighbor's house and my house in order to get to my house. Well, when I walked through that gap, I looked up and there's this dude standing there. Now, about 2 weeks before this particular day, my neighbor's son had been arrested for drug trafficking, which is awesome when you're a police officer and your next door neighbor was trafficking drugs. I found out about this because the fugitive task force knocked on my door wanting to talk to me, which was a lot of fun when I come running downstairs in my boxer shorts. And they held up a picture and they said, "Hey, do you know this guy?" And I said, "Yeah, he lives next door." And they said, "Oh, okay, well, these are his warrants." They showed me and it was drug trafficking. So I was not too pleased when his friends were around. So I'm walking up between the houses and there's this man standing there. And to my thinking, I was like, oh, this is one of Dipshit's friends. I'm going to screw with him because I was in uniform. People who are buying and selling drugs typically don't like police officers in uniform. So I looked up at this guy and he was probably about 6'2", 6'3", about 270 pounds. He was a male black. Looked like he was Samoan, like a Samoan black guy, if that makes any sense. I just remember he had a giant head, kind of like The Rock, like it's a giant head. And he was a big dude. And he's walking out through the houses and he just freezes. And he's looking at me. So I look up at him. I'm like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And this time I'm still like, this is one of my neighbor's friends. I'm just going to kind of harass him a little bit. And he turns white. He's like, nothing, I wasn't doing nothing. And I was like, well, that's an odd response. So then I put my stuff on the ground, and this is when happy-go-lucky me coming home from work turns into police officer trying to figure out what's going on turns on. So then I put my stuff on the ground, I take a step towards him, I say, no, what the fuck are you doing? Because that's how I talk to people sometimes. And he goes, I was coming from my cousin's house. I'm like, your cousin's house, really? I'm like, you coming from the, why are you coming from the back door? He goes, that's just how we always come. We always come from the front, from the back door. It's like, no, that's not true. Because I know my neighbors and they don't come out through their back door. And I was like, what's your cousin's name? And he couldn't come up with a name. These are all things that you do as a police officer on a daily basis when you're at work. So then I was like, why are you coming from back there? And he's giving me some BS. So finally I said, what house are you coming from? And he does one of these, he points directly at my house. Now, he's carrying a laptop computer and a cell phone charger hanging out of his pocket, and had some other small things in his hands. I still wasn't thinking necessarily that he had stolen anything, but he was clearly up to no good. So at that point, I told him to get down on the ground, face down, and put his arms out, which he totally complied. He gets down on the ground, puts his arms out, and he's kind of looking at me because he thinks that I was a police officer that was responding to a call, which I wasn't. I was just trying to come home. So he's down on the ground, he's being compliant. I reach into my pocket, I pull up my cell phone, I call 911, only time I've ever called 911 in my life, and I say, hey, here's my name, here's my badge, this is my address, I've got somebody detained in my yard, I need cars now. And it was shift change, so I didn't really know if there were going to be cars available. And the dispatcher says, okay, we have a 10-3 on you. 10-3 means officer in trouble. I said, all right, thanks, I'm going to hang up the phone now. So I hang up my phone, I put it back in my cargo pocket. So now I'm in the yard between my house and my neighbor's house. My gun belt and stuff is about 6 feet behind me, and my suspect is about 10-15 feet in front of me, maybe 10 yards in front of me. And I tell him, I'm like, all right, you stay there. Well, I think when I was calling 911 and things, he realized that I wasn't actually on duty. So now he's starting to think about how he's going to get out of this. So I reached back for my duty belt, and I put a finger on my cuff case. And as soon as that cuff case goes pop, you know, and you hear the cuffs kind of rattle in there, this dude jumps up to his feet, turns, and runs straight into my yard. Well, this guy was 6'2", 6'3", 270 pounds. He wasn't a small guy. He was built like a football player, like an offensive lineman. He was a big guy. And I was like, oh crap. I'm like, well, first my thought was, oh, this is awesome. My yard's fenced in. He's not getting out of my yard. My yard is fenced in, but I only have like a 3.5 foot fence. It's not a privacy fence or anything. So this son of a bitch comes running into the yard, and it's funny because I have like an airlock where you put like trash cans and stuff. He comes in, turns, shuts the door, runs through the other door, turns, shuts the door, and I was gaining on him while he was doing this. And me being aware of how my gates work, I know that the latches don't work very well, so I just freaking slammed right through the first gate, slammed right through the second gate. I'm chasing after him. He runs out of his shoes, and we go up to the fence on the other side, and I'm gaining on him. I'm like on his heels. I'm almost to the point where I can jump out and tackle the guy. Well, the son of a bitch jumps the fence, and at the time I'd been a police officer for about 3 years, and to be honest, I'd let myself go a little bit. I was 5'9", probably 138 pounds. Right now I'm 5'9", about 125 pounds, but I've been lifting since then. This was an incident that changed my life and made me really get in shape. So anyway, I was 5'9", 138 pounds, kind of chubby, not in very good shape. And I was like, son of a bitch. I was like, he hopped that fence. You can't fail now. You've already called 911. You have to hop that fence too. So turns out, when you're motivated, you can hop a fence pretty quickly. So I hopped the fence, and as I got on the other side of the fence, he had slipped and fallen, and he was trying to get up. So his hands were still on the ground. He was trying to get traction with his feet, trying to get up and run. And I was able to jump on his back and kind of put him in like a headlock. So he's on the ground, and I grab him and I tell him, like, all right, stop, you're under arrest. And this son of a bitch, he goes ahead and just stands right up. So as he's beginning to stand up, mind you, I'm not small. I've never been small. I played sports when I was younger. I was in the Army for 7 years. Did a lot of things in my life. I've physically handled some people before, so I know what I'm doing. And so as he starts to stand up, before he can get his footing, I kind of put my hip in his hip, and I had my hand on his neck, and I yell, I'm like, get on the ground! And I go to hip toss him as hard as I can. I mean, I put everything I had into it. Hip, shoulder. He didn't budge. He didn't budge at all. He stands straight up. So now, I'm 5'9", he's 6'2", 6'3". So I've got him. I've got my forearm around his neck, and I'm trying to hold on, and I'm on my tippy toes, and I'm looking up at him like, and all I can see is this freaking pumpkin in front of me. And at that time, you know, there's a lot of things that go through your head. One of the things that was going through my head was, this guy is big. If he turns on me and he squares up and we have to fight, this is not going to be fun. I am not looking forward to this. I was already thinking about how I was going to maybe try to take his legs and just hang on for dear life until backup got there. I had a lot going on in my head. I was also, you know, this was only 8-10 seconds from the point that he jumped up to the point that I was on his back over there. And I'm over there thinking, what the hell did this guy do? Like, what authority do I have right now? Has this guy committed a crime? He's certainly acted suspicious, and he's certainly run. But what if here I am fighting with a guy who's guilty of nothing other than trespassing? What level of force am I going to use? Because if he and I start to fight, if he turns on me, I'm going to be in a fight for my life. And you don't hold anything back in that situation. I carry a knife on me, a big knife, and I was contemplating whether or not I was going to have to use that knife. So I'm trying to think of everything that's going on. I'm up here on his back, and he's just standing there. He's reaching up, grabbing my arms, trying to get my arms down. And that is the point where I realized this part of my forearm right here, this bony part, was actually on his chin. So I grabbed my other hand and I cranked that in on his chin, and I was trying to put his jawbone through the back of his ear. And I clamped down on that. I don't know if you've ever had that happen to you before, if you've ever experienced that kind of thing, but it hurts. It hurts a lot. And he dropped like a sack of potatoes. Well, when he dropped, I realized that me being on his back was his position of power. And I didn't want to be where his power was. I just wanted to be able to hold him and control him until backup arrived. So at that point, I kind of spun around on him. So I'm here, and I've still got his head, and his butt and everything is back that way. So I'm standing up, he's on his hands and knees, and I've got him in a headlock now. And I remember sitting there holding him, and I was squeezing tight, and he starts screaming that he can't breathe. Mind you, this was before the whole I can't breathe thing became popular. This was in 2014, I'm pretty sure. So nobody was saying that to be cool. Like he was saying he couldn't breathe because I had him by the neck. So I remember I went ahead and let up a little bit, and every time I let up, I could feel him start to push off the ground. And I remember clamping down at one point, and I got down in his face, and I said, because listen, for all I know, he had just come out of my house, and my wife and my 2 children were asleep inside, and I didn't know what had happened. So I clamped down on him. I got down in his ear. I said, listen, motherfucker, if you try to get up, I will fucking kill you. Do you understand me? And I was squeezing so hard that his earring cut my bicep. But then I would start to let up a little bit, and if he tried to get up, I would squeeze. Eventually, he got to the point where he said, okay, I give up. And he just kind of sat there on all fours, and I had a little bit of tension, but nothing that was like painful. I just had him tight enough that he knew that I was not a small person, that I was not someone to be screwed with, and that he should not try to get up anymore. Then the crazy thing happened. So you go through all those thoughts. There I am on the ground, and I'm no longer in my yard. I'm no longer in the place where I said I was going to be. I'm actually in my neighbor's backyard. And not only that, but I'm in a place where if you were to drive by, you would not be able to see where I was. So now I had to start to think, where's my backup coming from? What am I gonna do? Like, should I start yelling for the neighbors? Can I hold on to them? Can I get my phone out and make another phone call? You know, a lot of things that start running through your head. And that is the point that I realized I started listening and I didn't hear any sirens. I'd called 911, told them that there was an officer in trouble who had someone detained in his yard, and I didn't hear anything. So I didn't know if anyone was coming or not. Finally, it seemed like it took minutes. It was probably a matter of seconds. I started hearing sirens. So I just kind of held them there. And then I hear the siren, and like what you do when you're responding to this kind of run, you kind of drive to the end of the street and then you turn your sirens off, you leave your lights on, and you kind of cruise in just so that you can hear when you pull up. So I heard the siren turn off. I was like, okay, they're close. I heard a Crown Vic, which is a beautiful sound, coming down my street, and I heard them pass my house because my house number is kind of hard to see. So then I actually had to wait. I heard the car go in park. I heard the car door open. I heard the car door close. And even at that point, I realized, okay, he's probably 2-3 houses down. Let me give him a second. Then when I started hearing car keys jingle, because when police officers run, you can hear their car keys jingling. That's when I started calling out and said, hey, I'm over here, I'm over here. And the officer, I actually don't know the officer's name. That was the first one to show up. But he says, okay, I hear you, I'm coming. And as soon as this dude heard the other officer saying he was coming, he just flattened straight on the ground. He goes, I give up. The officer came up, we put him in cuffs, picked him up, walked him out to the cruiser, and then more officers started showing up, and it was wild. Like, I didn't know what happened. I didn't know why he had run. And I said, hey, can you guys check that van? There's something weird about it. It doesn't belong here. They opened up the back hatch, and there was flat screen TV stacked, doom, 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 all the way up to the top. And they started laughing. They're like, hey, do you have a flat screen TV and a PlayStation 4? I think that's what it was back then. And I was like, I have a flat screen, but I don't have a PlayStation. Let me go look. At that time, I hadn't been in my house yet. So came in the house, realized that my house was locked up tight. There was nothing taken. So while the officers were here trying to figure out what this guy was doing, and they'd seen his van full of property, people started calling in saying their house had been broken into. He was using my yard as a staging area. When we retraced our steps, there was a flat screen TV just over here off camera that was in my yard right next to one of his shoes that he ran out of. They were coming into my yard, hopping my fence in the back, going to my neighbors' houses, and I live in a nice, quiet neighborhood. They were just going up to people's back doors, and if your door slid open, they'd go in and they would take what they wanted. 8 people called in, said their house was broken into. One guy actually called in, said that he went for a run at 6:30 in the morning, came back, and his stuff was gone. So they watched him go for a run and then went into his house and then took his stuff while he was out for a jog, which is pretty incredible. So they tied them to 8 burglaries that night, a couple of armed robberies to gas stations in other jurisdictions, as well as multiple stolen cars. And he had somebody with him. When he went upstairs to be interviewed, he gave up everything. So he told him the names of the people he was working with and all this kind of stuff. To make a long story short, he got 4 years in prison for that. I don't know. It was an interesting experience. Not something I ever care to do again. But it is what it is. So that is the story of the craziest arrest I ever had. And I did it right here in my own backyard. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.